I have been waiting to make this video for a very long time. So this will be our full season NFL picks. And for those of you that do not know me, I am probably one of the biggest NFL fans you'll ever meet. I own an Instagram page called NFL Bull Nation. I have about 120K followers over there, and I post NFL content, NFL Reels every day. I'm in the top 1% of fantasy football players on Yahoo. I'm a profitable bettor at multiple casinos and banned from them. And I'm so excited to jump into this. So I have like 10 to 13 picks that I really like this year, and they are all on the Underdog app. If you want to get that, use the promo code PISTONS. They're going to give you a 50% deposit match. You also get this Travis Kelce free winner for him to go over 1 yard, and you get a free month in our VIP group. If you're interested, just send a screenshot to this email. All the details, all the links are in the description. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So this is literally off the top of my head. This is just me going to ramble to you. I've done research into all of these players throughout the offseason. So now I'm just going to drop it here. So first up we have is Najee Harris, and we're taking his over 825.5 rushing yards. Okay, so one, Najee Harris historically is a very good runner in terms of stats. He's been putting up 1,000-yard seasons pretty much his entire career so far. Now, two, he's heading into a contract year, so he has that extra incentive to push even harder and basically hit these types of numbers. Number three, Arthur Smith coming over is absolutely massive. So for context, guys, Arthur Smith was in Atlanta for the last couple years. 2 years ago, Cordarrelle Patterson and Tyler Algier were his running backs. Cordarrelle Patterson was a fantasy football machine. Tyler Algier started breaking out and had a 1,000-yard season. Next year, Bijan Robinson comes in, splits the backfield between Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, and we see a pretty good offense over there. At the end of the day, he ran the ball a little bit too much, but their quarterback was Desmond Ridder. Now he's coming over into an offense, and this guy's a very good offensive coordinator, keep in mind. He was the coach in Atlanta. Not a good head coach, very good offensive coordinator. So he runs the most 2 tight end sets in the entire NFL. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have a lot of Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, who's pretty much an extra O lineman. I don't know if you've seen this guy at the NFL Combine. He's the biggest tight end I've ever seen. This dude's going to be on the O line. I think he's like 6'9", 6'10". Don't quote me. The dude's monster. So Najee Harris, this Steelers offense is going to run through the running backs every single game, and Najee Harris will be the focal point of that. Yes, I do believe Jaylen Warren is a better player, but one, Najee Harris is going to be that goal line back between the tackles, breaking off big chunks of yards, the 5 to 10 yards. When the game gets late and they need the guy to run out the clock, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get their 8 or 9 wins like they do every year. Najee Harris is going to be that guy. So you want to get him here at 825 on Underdog. And some of these are going to be controversial. The first two are kind of boring, but the second pick is Jaden Reed of the Packers. So with Jaden Reed, he is a rookie receiver, going into his sophomore year now out of Michigan State. First half of last season, he was kind of all right here and there. The Packers have probably one of the deepest receiving rooms in the league. So he came into the year behind Watson, Romeo Doubs, and then Dontavian Wicks and him kind of fought it out for the last spot for the first couple weeks of the year. But as Jordan Love began to break out, Jaden Reed also broke out, scoring about 9 or 10 touchdowns on the year. Half of them were receiving. I believe he had a couple rushing as well. But my point, last 8 weeks of the season, in fantasy football alone, he was the wide receiver 9. And this guy was just Jordan Love's number 1 target for the last 8-9 weeks of the season. Look, at the end of the day, yes, there were some injuries that might have opened up a larger role for him. But we saw his advanced metrics jumping off the charts. This guy is a very good receiver, and I would be shocked if the Packers didn't use him to his full capability. I do know the Packers have 4 really good receivers, and they're just going to be able to rotate them out, and each one's going to probably be able to play like 70% of snaps. But if there was one guy I had to pick to become the number 1, it would probably be Jaden Reed, because he's just explosive. Look, Romeo Doubs, he led the NFL, or he was second in the NFL in red zone targets. He's a huge red zone threat, good receiver. Dontavian Wicks, he's just an all-arounder. Christian Watson, same exact thing. Jaden Reed, there's just something about when you watch this dude, I think personally he looks a little bit different than the rest of the receivers. I think he's the best one in this room. And even if he's not, he still has a very good chance of hitting this line. So go ahead, lock that in. I think Jordan Love will have a great year. Tons of passing yards to go around. And yeah, next pick on the slip. You guys are not going to like this, but just hear me out. Achane, we're taking his under 775.5 rushing yards. So I've been on record multiple times this offseason, if you watch my football content, saying Achane is one of the worst picks in fantasy football, and at least at his current price. And just let me break it down to you why, because probably 60%, 70% of you are going to be watching me and saying, I don't know, bro, like, what are you talking about? So up until about 2 weeks ago, I was in on Devon Achane. But things have changed. So in the Dolphins' last preseason game, they did 11 snaps with the starters, meaning they used the preseason snaps, guys, to get a look at what their actual offense will look like during the season. In those 11 snaps, Raheem Mostert played 9 of them. Devon Achane played 2. The starters all came out, and Devon Achane continued playing with Skylar Thompson at quarterback and the entire backups. Now, am I saying Devon Achane is a backup? No. But what I'm saying is they view Raheem Mostert as a focal point of this offense. So is Achane, don't get me wrong, but Raheem Mostert is also a focal point. Think about last year. We saw games like against the Ravens, I believe it was the last week of the year, where Raheem Mostert was out. Achane, easy 27 fantasy points, 150 yards, whatever it might be. Yes, he's going to have those games. Yes, he's the most efficient runner we've probably ever seen right now as of last year. I believe he had like 7 yards per carry. It's going to come down. Look, I'm not saying he's not an efficient runner, but it will come down a little bit. Maybe 5 yards a carry, maybe even 6. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying here, Raheem Mostert is going to get a ton of work. A lot more than most people think. And this line is getting way too inflated. Devon Achane also carries a huge injury risk. He's about 185 pounds, and we've never seen, ever, unless you count like Darren Sproles, a running back that was that size to be able to actually carry a full workload throughout the entire season. So my main points here, 1, Achane's going to be very good. He's going to be very involved. Don't get me wrong. 2, Raheem Mostert is still here. He's the number 1. He's 1A, 1B at minimum. That's what I'm saying. 3, Raheem Mostert, he's played all the preseason snaps. Look, I know some people might think that's kind of like cheesy to bring that up, but it means something. Achane, people are thinking he's going to jump to 60, 70% of snaps. We've never seen a running back of his size become a workhorse. I think at best we're looking at like 55% of snaps, maybe 60% if we're lucky. And even then, he carries a huge injury risk. So when we're looking at players that we can take unders on, Devon Achane, I think this line's inflated. I think he's probably going to get like 700 rushing yards and probably get like 600 receiving yards, 500 receiving yards, and put up like a 1,200, 1,300 yard scrimmage season, maybe 10 touchdowns. So it'll still be very good, don't get me wrong. I just think personally, his rushing yards, it's a little bit too high when you bake in the injury risk, Raheem Mostert. And I know a lot of you are going to be like super like hard against that, because especially like the people that drafted him in fantasy. But at least go do some research on it, because I've done a ton. You can join our fantasy Discord or just watch my fantasy football channel on here. But I have a video on here. You can see it's 45K views where I break it down in more detail. If you want to go check that out. Next pick, Kyren Williams. We're taking his over 975.5 rushing yards. Okay, guys, this is probably one of the easiest picks I've ever seen, in my opinion. This line could have been higher. Same for his rushing touchdowns. It's at 9.5. I love the over on that. So if you watch my content as well, Kyren Williams is one of my favorite players this year. And there's some people that are off on him, and I just don't get why. So let me kind of break it down for you. Last season, people don't understand. Kyren Williams was on pace for 2,100 yards and 23 touchdowns. Get that through your head. That's more than Christian McCaffrey. That's more touchdowns than McCaffrey. That's more yards per game than McCaffrey. Yes, he's a receiving back and a running back, meaning like rushing the ball, obviously. But he's going into this year, and the entire argument is, 1, he's injury prone, which I do get. He has a history of injuries, but Sean McVay will not shut up about this dude. He absolutely loves Kyren Williams. And when Sean McVay likes a guy, he always will feed them. It's historical. Look back at Todd Gurley. We had that stint where he just hated Cam Akers and had Darrell Henderson in the mix and Sony Michel. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, kind of like this midway in between. He couldn't figure it out. Kyren Williams is that guy. Guys, he averaged 100, 150 yards per game. And then you have the college football fans, who I think are casuals personally, and let me tell you why before you freak out again, that are saying Blake Corum's going to come in here and eat into his workload. Now, am I going to say Blake Corum isn't going to get any work? No, he's probably going to get anywhere from 5 to 8 touches per game. But let me give you some additional context to basically change your mind about this. Third-round running backs historically are not doing really well to hit. So go look up third-round running backs in the past. We haven't had a good third-round running back hit really, outside of like Devon Achane and like maybe one other guy in the last 5 years. And to be honest, guys, like I'm just not seeing it with Blake Corum. Yes, I think he's a great runner, but go look at like Zach Charbonnet, for example. Kenneth Walker, absolutely amazing rookie year, first year as a starter. Zach Charbonnet comes in, everyone gets scared off him. Charbonnet got like 5 to 8 carries a game, like touches in total. and the Rams are going to be giving 24, 25 touches to the running back position on average. Kyren's still going to get 20 carries a game, or 20 touches between carries, receptions. He's an awesome pick here, guys. He scored a ton of touchdowns. He's going to continue it. I have no reason to believe he doesn't unless he gets a major injury. And in that case, then Blake Corum is an amazing pick. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm trying to say here, guys, third-round running backs historically are not really something to be too worried about. And Kyren Williams has the upside. He showed it last year. They only keeps talking good things about him. I find it very hard to believe Blake Corum's going to eat into that work role too much. Next pick on the slip is another one you guys are not going to like probably, and it's Xavier Worthy under 750.5 receiving yards, So Xavier Worthy, I think he will be a very, very good receiver. Don't get me wrong. But what I mean by this is historically Andy Reid is very slow to integrate new pieces into his offense. We saw it with Rashee Rice last season in his rookie year. He had the best receiving season for any receiver ever in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs, arguably, in my opinion. He probably did. But Andy Reid slowly eased him in. Rashee Rice wasn't a full-time starter until about week 11. And am I saying Xavier Worthy is going to be a full-time starter off the bat? I don't think he will, but I do think he'll play a lot, maybe a little bit more than Rashee Rice. They had first-round draft capital. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be the third target in this offense, behind Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, who looks like he's not getting suspended now. We have Hollywood Brown, who's coming back from an injury, and when he does come back, he's going to be the 3A, 3B with Hollywood Brown. And yes, everyone kind of freaked out over the preseason. I saw a good breakdown that Nick BDGE did of the preseason game that everyone got kind of hyped up about with Xavier Worthy. And the plays where Xavier Worthy played, the first play, he had like a 38-yard catch. He was offside by like a whole foot, and that wouldn't happen in the regular league. And basically he was saying how when you're as fast as Worthy, of course you're going to get separation if they give you a full yard. And then two, his touchdown that he caught, it was with Carson Wentz. But with the snaps Patrick Mahomes played, it was mostly Rashee Rice and a little bit of Travis Kelce. I know it's preseason, it's a small sample. I think Worthy will be a great player. But 750 yards as the 3A, 3B when Hollywood Brown comes back. And I think he could play even less when Hollywood Brown comes back. We'll have to see. I'm taking the under. Okay, this is probably my favorite pick. Or maybe not my favorite. It's one of them. Evan Engram. Higher than 725.5 receiving yards. I actually really like his receiving touchdown totals as well. So, number one, Evan Engram was fourth in the NFL in receptions last season. That includes Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, all the big names. Fourth, the number 4. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. He was 4. They just lost Calvin Ridley. That was about I believe, between Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones leaving, I think they have about 200 or so vacated targets, which is the third most in the NFL, if I remember that right. It's either third or fourth most. So basically, there's a lot of passes to go around. And if we see anything similar to the volume that Evan Engram got last season, this is a home run of a line. He's going to get 800, 900, maybe even 1,000 yards. Yes, I understand Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU looks really good in camp, in games, and I think he's going to be great. Don't get me wrong, but Evan Engram is a key part of this offense. We've seen it 2 years ago when the Jaguars went to the playoffs and they beat the Chargers in that comeback game. Evan Engram was breaking out at the end of that year. And then obviously last year he had a pretty good season, was very consistent in fantasy, about 10 points per game, racking up receptions. He was getting like 5 for 50 every single week. I think there's no reason to believe that doesn't continue and improve with the amount of vacated targets. And we even saw it in preseason. I know it's a small sample, but like Evan Engram was getting targeted at a pretty high clip. Next pick on the slip, Kenneth Walker over 925.5 rushing yards. So again, this is something I really love. There's a new OC, Brian Grubb, in Seattle. And all we've heard out of camp in Seattle is that they love Kenneth Walker. And to be honest with you guys, I don't know how I feel about Seattle's offense. Traditionally, they were a bit more boring. And now with Brian Grubb, the thought is they would transition into more of an air raid offense where DK Metcalf, Jake Bobo, Tyler Lockett, JSN are getting all the targets. But Kenneth Walker has looked really good in the receiving game in camp, supposedly. on top of in the rushing game. And Zach Charbonnet, I think he's a good player, but I just think Kenneth Walker's a lot better. And I think most Seahawk fans would agree with me that Charbonnet is a good backup. Maybe even could be a starter on a couple teams. But Kenneth Walker is borderline elite, and he's going to get a ton of work this season. So I have no reason to believe all the camp reports coming out, as long as Kenneth Walker can stay healthy, with the offense switching to more of an air raid attack, there's going to be open rushing lanes for him. The linebackers will be further back, and we're taking his higher. The next pick on the slip, this might be my favorite. DJ Moore over 1,000 yards. I also really like Nico Collins as over, but I just couldn't find it. So, 1, DJ Moore is the number 1 in this offense. It's not up for debate. People are going to say, oh, Keenan Allen, Romo didn't say, like, guys, Keenan Allen showed up to camp 20 pounds overweight. He's a great receiver. Rome Odunze, he's still a rookie. He's going to be a phenomenal receiver. I think Rome Odunze has the potential to be better than Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr. Potential. Didn't say he is. But DJ Moore, he just got paid, 1. Number 2, DJ Moore is the only wide receiver in the last 5 years to be able to put up a top 10 fantasy receiver performance in a bottom 5 passing offense. And I get it, fantasy football is different. But think about this. He just put up 1,300 yards with Tyson Bagent and Justin Fields. He has Caleb Williams now. And look, some of you might not be bought into Caleb Williams. Me personally, I am. And even if you're not, you have to admit, Caleb Williams is a major upgrade from what you saw last season. And to think DJ Moore won't be able to replicate what he did last season with Caleb Williams now there is just insanity to me. Like, I think DJ Moore could easily go for 1,200, 1,300, upwards of 1,500 yards. I think he's probably going to finish with like 1,250, maybe 10 touchdowns. But I think the upside is huge. He's the number 1 here. They've said it in camp. He's played in all the 2 wide receiver sets. He's going to be on the field a ton. Easy pick every day of the week with DJ Moore right there. The next one on the slip we have is Trey McBride over 800 receiving yards. So this one is another easy one. Trey McBride broke out the second half of last year. Last season was really weird for the Cardinals. You had 17 games. Josh Dobbs started the first half of the season. Josh Dobbs in the Cardinals offense was pathetic. I mean, Josh Dobbs is a good backup. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing against him. But the Cardinals offense had nothing going for them. And I mean, nothing. It was just James Conner basically taking the team on his back. Trey McBride, it was his sophomore year last year, I believe. Pretty good tight end. And then Kyler Murray comes back. And this guy just goes berserk. He was the tight end 1 from the point Kyler came back to the end of the season. Trey McBride was the tight end 1, and I mean the 1. He had more points per game in fantasy than Travis Kelce. And the connection between Trey McBride and Kyler Murray was amazing. Every time Kyler dropped back, his first read was Trey McBride at a higher clip than anyone else in the entire NFL. And I'm not joking. I think his target share was about a 33% or 32%. Don't quote me. It's around there. So heading into next season, what do I expect? Well, obviously you bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., who projects to be the number 1 target pretty clearly. But behind him, I'd argue Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to free up the field. Who was competing with Trey McBride last season for targets? I believe it was Michael Wilson. I don't even remember. It wasn't good. Let's put it like that. So Trey McBride, absolute smash pick here. Every single day of the week, he's going to have a huge season, in my opinion. Get him there every day of the week that you can. Next pick on the slip is Isiah Pacheco. We're taking his higher than 950.5 rushing yards. So I really like Isiah Pacheco this year as well. Reason being, so last season in games where Jerick McKinnon played, Pacheco did not play 3 downs. He would play 2 downs. He'd get the bulk of the carries, of course, but he wasn't in there on the receiving downs or anything like that. This season, Jerick McKinnon is gone. Isiah Pacheco is the 3-down workhorse. We saw it in all the preseason games where the Chiefs starters played and Mahomes was the quarterback. Isiah Pacheco played every single down. Now, look, I do really like the rookie running back. I believe he's out of UCLA. He has the long blonde hair. He's looked really good in preseason. But Isiah Pacheco is the 1A, 1B, and 1C here. He's going to play every down. He's going to play most of them. And he's only going to come out when he needs a breather. So To think this guy won't get 1,000 rushing yards and one of the most explosive offenses in the league. Last season, defenses were more collapsed on Kansas City because their offense wasn't as good as it normally is. This is because their receivers sucked. Now they have a healthy Rashee Rice. They have a healthy Travis Kelce. They have Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. Those defenses are going to be a lot more expanded. Rushing lanes are going to be a lot bigger. And we saw it with Pacheco in the offseason, or in the postseason last year. He broke off big runs specifically against teams like the Miami Dolphins and even the Buffalo Bills. He had a bit of a tough game against the Niners in the Super Bowl, but still, this rushing total, him to get 1,000 yards, it seems like a lock. So, lock that one in. I have 3 more picks. Bijan Robinson, we're taking is higher than 7.5 rushing TDs. Reason we're taking this is very, very simple. New offensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, he's coming over from the LA Rams. And guys, Bijan Robinson, they've said it multiple times, they're ready to just unleash him. He is one of the best running back prospects we've probably ever seen, and it's a shame that Arthur Smith wasn't able to use him to his full ability last year. The Atlanta Falcons have one of the best, if not the best, I would probably say they're top 5 in terms of run blocking O-lines. They have, Chris Lindstrom, absolute dog, and a couple other really good guys on the line. But Bijan will be the running back 1 here. I think he'll probably get about 70% of the work. Algier will come in for the other 30%. Bijan will be the goal line back, hold the important downs when the game's close and they really need to get a win. This offense is going to be improved with Kirk Cousins coming over, who's not a rushing threat by any means, which means Bijan Robinson is taking all that work out of the backfield compared to other backs like Saquon Barkley, where you got Jalen Hurts to worry about, or Derrick Henry, where you got to worry about Lamar. So go ahead, lock in is higher than 7.5 rushing TDs. I believe we have 2 or 3 picks left. So Garrett Wilson over 1,225.5 yards. That's a high total. But any receiver that has received a 24 or 25, I believe it was, percent target share in an Aaron Rodgers offense historically always gets over 1,200 yards and finishes historically in fantasy as the top 6 receiver. So Garrett Wilson last season, I believe he had one of the highest target totals in the NFL, around 150. I kind of want to look it up now. Garrett Wilson target totals 2023. 168. Guys, if and those are from Zach Wilson and among other quarterbacks. If these are Aaron Rodgers targets, this guy is going to post 1,500 yards. As long as he stays healthy, as long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, and of course we're assuming Aaron Rodgers is back to prime Aaron Rodgers. But even if he isn't, I think Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers is the biggest upgrade in the history of the NFL. And I'm not even exaggerating. I can't remember or look back at a situation where I said the worst starting quarterback, maybe even worse than other teams' backups, all the way to Aaron Rodgers. Mind-blowing. So Garrett Wilson, he's the number 1 here. He's probably the number 2 as well, because they don't really have much in the receiving game. You can count Breece Hall in the receiving game, but from actual receiver standpoint, it's like Tyler Conklin. It's a no-brainer. Garrett Wilson's over. And I believe this is the last pick we have for you. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb over 1,400 yards. So CeeDee Lamb last season, obviously he just got paid. Highest paid receiver in the NFL, I believe now. Dak Prescott, still there. Running back situation, not as good as last year. I'm not trying to say Pollard was great, but in the second half of last year, Pollard was the second graded running back in rushing performance via PFF. You can fact check me if you want. CeeDee Lamb was the number 1 receiver from week 9, or I believe week 10, all the way through the end of the year, including playoffs. He was the number 1, and it was, I don't think it was by a wide margin, but it was by a pretty big margin. CeeDee Lamb is going to get a ton of catches. They have Brandon Cooks there. I'm not really that worried. The run game's not good, like I said. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. He's going to feed Lamb, and it's going to be kind of like a knockoff Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. And I only say knockoff because I think Dak is nowhere near what Aaron Rodgers was. But CeeDee Lamb is as good as prime Devontae Adams borderline. This guy is absolutely insane. He's one of the best receivers in the league. Probably the best receiver you could possibly have if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And he's going to get a ton of passes thrown his way. He averaged almost 120 yards per game the last, eight games of the year. That's insane. That was on pace for, 2,000. So, lock in his over at 1,400. I think he'll hit this pretty easily as long as he can stay healthy for the entire season. Probably put up, 1,500, 1,600. I think he has the potential to get 1,800, something like that. But there are all the picks. If you want to stop, pause, lock any of them in. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Sorry if I just rambled a little bit longer than normal. And as I said, they are all available on Underdog. If you want to use the promo code PISTONS, you get the deposit bonus, you get the free winner on Travis Kelce over half a yard, and you get a free month in our VIP group. Just go download it, use the code. We have other codes in the description if you want to check those out as well. And yeah, thanks for your time, guys. Have a great day.